What I'm going to do is schedule the bus to pick you all up about 11:30. But if any of you tomorrow are not feeling well enough to serve, I'd like you to communicate that to our court staff, Officer Fitzgerald, if you could, by, say, 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. And if any one of you are unable to serve tomorrow due to health concerns, then likely we will cancel the court day and permit you all to either recover health or remain healthy, such that we could resume on Thursday morning. The only alternative to doing that would be to excuse an ill juror, that is, discharge you from this panel and continue with the remaining number. And I don't want to do that if I can avoid that. You all have given us your time for now, well over a month of time since we started this on February 14. You've all given this case your close attention, and I'd like you all to remain with us throughout this trial, if at all possible. So I would rather shut down for one day to permit you all to feel up to the task rather than having to excuse a juror. If illness prevented someone from serving for multiple days, then I might have to take a different course of action. But at least for now, plan the following: that tomorrow we would go only from 12 o'clock to 4 o'clock, that is, an afternoon sitting. That if tomorrow morning we're unable to have all of you available, then we would notify you probably by 10 o'clock tomorrow morning that we will not be sitting. And if you don't get that call, then you should assume we will be sitting and make arrangements to be picked up. Let's resume with the testimony of Detective Smith.
Stiff, sir. Thank you, sir.
Your Honor, if the medical records that were previously authenticated that are be marked as next number exhibit.
In the form they are currently in?
Correct, Your Honor.
Yes. Bias? Yes, all right, they now received exhibit 337.
Detective Smith, I'm just going to place on the screen the top portion of Exhibit 337. And just ask you if you recognize that phone number there, sir, on the exhibit.
It's the phone number, phone number to St. Mary's Medical Center.
Can you read it, please?
It's 561-844-6300.
And are you familiar with that number from your many years as a homicide and other major crimes detective?
Yes, sir.
Have you called that number a number of times?
Yes, sir.
Have you received calls from that number a number of times?
I have, I believe so.
This time, Your Honor, that's a 3-page part of Exhibit 249, phone records be marked as for identification.
They may.
www.
For the record, placing a portion of Exhibit 249, specifically cellular phone records for area code 203-606-8969. I'm calling your attention now, Detective, to the entries that I have highlighted, the first one being February 14th, 2013 at 10:36 a.m. The number that's listed first as the originating number, focuses. Do you recognize that number, sir?
Yes, sir, that's St. Mary's.
And from your investigation and a subsequent search warrant, do you recognize the second number here, sir?
I believe so.
And which number is that, sir?
I believe that's the defendant's.
Aaron Hernandez?
Correct.
And the next entry, February 14th, 10:36, also shows the same two numbers, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Page listed as page 43 of Exhibit 249, again, but specifically referencing ID www. Calling your attention now, sir, to February 14th, 2013, 7 p.m. That first originating number is to where, sir?
That is from St. Mary's.
And going to the same number you identified as the defendant.
Correct. Yes, sir.
And the next entry, 726, same two numbers, sir?
Yes, sir.
Detective, just calling your attention out of page 50 of Exhibit 249, also www. February 17th, 2013, 8:31 a.m. The originating number is what, sir?
Also St. Mary's.
And that number is calling what number?
The defendant also.
And just to clarify, Detective, on February 13th, 2013, until about February 17th or 18th, 2013, was there somebody you knew who was present at St. Mary's Medical Center?
Yes.
Who was that?
Alexander Bradley.
Now, Detective Smith, I believe when we left off before the lunch break, I was moving to the new topic of your investigation and what, if anything, happened at a certain point. But before we get there, Detective, you had mentioned during direct examination prior to the lunch break that you did observe what appeared to be a hole in the right side of Mr. Bradley's face. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes, sir.
And just by way of what you're aware of from the investigation, you indicated that one small lead fragment was recovered from his person or from his face. Is that correct?
Correct.
The rest of the bullet, though, Detective, was that ever recovered to your knowledge?
It was not.
And for those who may not know or may not have been paying attention as part of the trial, are there other parts of a bullet besides the lead core?
Yes.
What is that, sir?
Be the shell casing.
In addition to the shell casing, is there something that's wrapped around the lead core?
There could be also a copper jacket.
Was there ever a copper jacket recovered from the crime scene at fiscal court?
No, not that I know.
Judge, calls for speculation. He doesn't know if this bullet had a copper jacket or not.
Rephrase.
Well, Detective, you had an opportunity to look at the what you described as a small lead fragment. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Did that appear, again, based upon your training experience, and particular experience as a homicide investigator, did that small lead fragment appear to be a full projectile, a full bullet?
Absolutely not. No.
And the remainder of what you say would be a full bullet, was that ever recovered to your knowledge at the crime scene?
No, it was not.
Detective Smith, you indicated, I'm not sure if we got to the date, but at some point calling your attention now to at or around May of 2013, did something occur that caused you to make this case, this investigation, active again?
Yes. Yes. Alexander.
Well, I'll ask that question if I can, sir. I'm sorry. Is it fair to state that based upon a lawsuit filed by Alexander Bradley, that you then activated the case again?
Yes.
Did you review the lawsuit of Alexander Bradley when you reactivated the case?
I did.
And Detective, it's fair to state that at or around the same time, going now into June of 2013, were you ultimately contacted by other law enforcement officials in Massachusetts?
Yes, sir.
And based upon the contact with other law enforcement officials and your review of the civil complaint filed by Alexander Bradley, did you engage in various investigative efforts to investigate this case?
Yes.
And were you also assisting these detectives from Massachusetts on a different case?
Yes, sir.
In the course of your investigation, and did you conduct various interviews of individuals in conjunction with detectives from Massachusetts?
I did. Yes.
Based upon your investigation, Detective Smith, did you ultimately apply for 3 search warrants?
Yes, sir, I did.
Can you describe for the jurors what the 3 search warrants were, who it was for, and what you were looking for?
They were for phone records, and I believe it was for the defendant's phone, also Deontay Thompson's phone, I believe, and another gentleman, Jarrell Pierre.
And in addition to what you called cell phone records, did you also request via a search warrant issued by a court in Florida what's commonly referred to as cell tower records?
Yes, sir.
And did you, in fact, relative to the phone number of the defendant, receive cell tower records for that phone number?
Yes, sir.
And is that the same phone number that we just had on the screen, the 203 number, 8969 at the end?
Yes, sir.
I'm calling your attention now to what you indicated was Deontay Thompson's phone number.
You may.
Detective Smith, I'm going to show you a binder. Do you recognize the phone number on that binder?
Yes, sir.
And is that the phone number that you subpoenaed, or not subpoenaed, but obtained certain cellular phone records, including tower records, for a phone number 561-257-9308,
Yes, sir.
ostensibly belonging to Deontay Thompson?
Correct.
And these records were obtained from Sprint?
Yes, sir.
You're asked that the binder with the Sprint records of Deontay Thompson be marked as next number entered.
Is there an objection?
No objection.
It is received.
338.
And Detective Smith, the remaining 2 cellular phone records that you obtained via search warrant, one was the 203 number that you identified as the defendant, Aaron Hernandez, is that correct?
Correct. Yes,
And that
sir.
was obtained from AT&T, is that correct?
Yes, sir, I believe so.
And for the record, those records have already been entered as Exhibit 249 in evidence. Relative to Jarrell Pierre,
Objection.
I'll see.
Yes. May we approach?
Yeah.
Now, Detective Smith, we've talked about 3 individuals for whom you were investigating and sought search warrants for phone records, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
I believe you've already talked about the defendant, Aaron Hernandez's number, Mr. Thompson's number. In your investigation, did you attempt to identify a cellular telephone number for one Jarrell Amos Pierre?
I did. Yes, sir.
And can you describe what investigative resources or you used to determine the phone number for Jarrell Amos Pierre?
What I use a SharePoint website on our personal intranet within the sheriff's office, but we've also got a system called Palms, which is all of our reports and arrest data that we take in just strictly for the sheriff's office itself.
And the Sheriff's Department, in particular the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Department, does that department keep records in the ordinary course of business as far as biographical information of persons who were either involved in motor vehicle accidents and or are complainants, victims, or suspects?
Yes, if anybody creates a report with the sheriff's office, it's entered into the Palms database, which takes all of their general height, weight, hair, and eyes, as well as their address, phone numbers that they use, and whatnot.
And that would include accident reports as well?
Yes, sir.
And those accident reports, Detective, is it fair to state that those are not always involved in criminal matters, but those are ultimately forwarded to the Florida Department of Transportation or Registered
Yes.
Motor Vehicles.
Yes, they all go to Tallahassee.
And from your investigative review of those records kept in the ordinary course of business by the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Department, did you find a phone number for Jarrell Amos Pierre?
I did, yes, sir.
And do you remember off the top of your head the phone number?
I do not.
Is there something that would refresh your memory?
Yes.
May I approach the witness, Ron?
You may.
I'm going to show you a document, sir. Does that refresh your memory as to what phone number you determined from the investigative leads you've just described belonged or had some association with Jarrell Amos Pierre?
It does.
And what is that phone number, sir?
404-861-3292.
And was that phone number sent for a search warrant for the records of that phone number?
Yes, sir.
Detective Smith, I'm going to place page 8 of Exhibit 251 on the screen.
Which I'm going to object again and ask that counsel pull that from view.
No, overruled at this stage.
I'm just zooming in on, for the record, item 116, name listed as JPD on this exhibit, and the phone number 404-861-3292. Is that the number that you sought records of via search warrant?
Objection, proper predicate.
Overruled.
Yes, sir.
Detective, again, is that the phone number that you sought a search warrant for cellular records related to an individual, Jarrell Pierre?
Yes, sir.
And are you aware, Detective, of whether or not the provider, AT&T, did in fact provide cell tower records for that number for the relevant time period you
Objection,
requested?
Judge, proper predicate, and hearsay.
I'll see you at sidebar. A telephone number. Am I supposed to hear that?
Yes, you are, Judge. I'm going to arrange for that in 1 second, okay? I was just unplugging. You want it, the whole room to hear, correct?
Yes, please.
Okay.
I'm going to place page 8 of Exhibit 251 on the screen.
Before that. Not far before that.
Number sent for a search warrant for the records of that phone number? Yes, sir.
Before.
Belonged or had some association with Jarrell Amos Pierre? It does. And what is that phone number, sir?
404-861-3292.
And was that, I'm going to show you a document, sir. Does that refresh your memory as to what phone number you determined from the investigative? I did. Of those records and whatnot. And that would include accident reports as well? Yes, sir. And those accident reports, detective, is it fair to state that those are not always involved in criminal matters, but those are ultimately forwarded to the Florida Department of Transportation or Registered Motor Vehicles?
Yes, they all go to Tallahassee.
And from your investigative review of those records kept in the ordinary course of business by the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Department, did you find a phone number for Jarrell Amos Pierre?
I did, yes, sir.
And do you remember off the top of your head the phone number?
I do not.
Is there something that would refresh your memory?
Yes.
May I approach the witness, Ron?
You may.
sir. Does that refresh your memory as to what phone number you determined from the investigative leads you just described belonged or had some association with Jarrell Amos Pierre?
It does.
And what is that phone number, sir?
404-861-3292.
And was that phone number sent for a search warrant for the records of that phone number?
Yes, sir.
As I hear no objection to that line of inquiry.
Your Honor, if I was allowed to sit there.
Hold, I'm sorry. Wait a minute, I'm sorry, Nance. All right, so the record is clear. I've had Ms. King play back a recording of the questions put to this witness by Mr. Hagan as to a public record search and the sources of information, and then the question as a result of that search whether or not a phone number was determined, the answer being that it was. The question, do you recall what it is? The answer, I do not. The question, is there something that could refresh your memory? The answer being yes. The witness then shown some records, and the witness then indicating a telephone number, 404-861-3292. I hear no objection to any of those questions, no objection to the number being given, and no motion to strike after that testimony was given. Did you hear an objection on the recording by Ms. King?
If I may have access to the record now, I'd like to be able to respond.
Did you hear an objection on the recording? That's...
I guess I don't have access to this record, because I'm sitting here, I go to sidebar, I try to make my record, you speak over me every single time. We have this issue, we've had this issue for the entire trial. We had this discussion, Mr. Sullivan had this discussion with you yesterday. You seem to cut off the defense every opportunity that we try to lay a record, and I just simply can't.
Mr. Bias.
If you don't want me to defend Mr. Hernandez, I will sit down and shut up and...
Mr. Baez?
The issue here...
The issue is this. You came up to sidebar, and you told me you had lodged objections to that testimony. My concern was I did not hear those objections. We have just played back the recording. Once again, I do not hear any objection on the record. My question to you now is, did you lodge an objection, or did you hear an objection on the recording as it was just played?
That portion, that small portion of the recording, no.
Okay.
And I will tell you, I'd like to still get out my argument and still.
Well, let's just finish this thread. Earlier, you objected to the introduction of telephone records of Jarrell Pierre, correct? About 15 minutes ago. The Commonwealth responded, well, they're already in through another source, but they're not attributed to Jarrell Pierre because they're in as prepaid phone records without a subscriber name. I indicated that the defense objection was sustained and that the Commonwealth was not going to attribute that number through a backdoor means via this witness. The Commonwealth then attempted to lay a foundation for this witness's knowledge of the phone number separate and apart from any prepaid phone records. You did not object to that line of inquiry. So the number came into testimony without objection. Now, that is the way I view procedurally how we get here. With that said, let me hear where I've missed something in the analysis.
Where you missed it was, I was allowing Mr. Hagan to continue and to try to lay the proper predicate for that number to come in. He based it on hearsay, which was this database that comes through, I guess, a collaborative effort of law enforcement through accident records and police records and things like that, which is hearsay, to come through And he was able to take these steps, and these are true steps that he took, so I had no basis for that objection. But the second that he put the number on the screen before the jury was the proper time for me to lodge an objection. I did so. You overruled it. I then stood up again and objected 2 or 3 times. That's what I was referring to at sidebar. But if you would have let me speak and not interrupt me like you do all the time, I would have been able to do so. What's the end result? You yell at me in front of the jury. You stand up, you look down at me, and you said, "I know!" And then you excuse the jury as if delaying this whole trial is my fault, when I'm the one that's not trying to introduce evidence based on hearsay. And that's the problem that I have here. I've been nothing but simply completely 100% respectful to this court from the day I walked in here.
You have.
As a lawyer who's doing everything that he's supposed to and complying with the obligations of my oath to be spoken to in that manner, especially in front of the jury. If you want to take me into your office and rip me a new one, by all means do so, but not in front of this jury.
Well,
Especially now when this man's life is on the line. I don't want to be a part of that.
I will be happy when the jury returns to tell them that I did not direct any comments to any attorney in particular. I'll be happy to tell this jury, I'll tell anyone, that I have the highest respect for the job that you've done in this case and for the professionalism that you have displayed throughout this case. You have enriched the courts of the Commonwealth by your practice in this case. Now, having said that, I listen carefully, or I try to listen carefully, to the proceedings as they occur, to listen for objections and to rule according to the rules of evidence as I understand them. Mr. Hagan went through with this witness a variety of sources of information, some of which may be hearsay, some of which may not because they are accepted from the hearsay rules based on public record application of the public records doctrine. Mr. Hagan, in his questions, I think, was somewhat careful to describe a number of these sources as public records, if indeed they would qualify as records kept in the ordinary course of business or records maintained by a public authority for non-testimonial purposes, then they would be admissible in evidence and information upon which one could rely. It was as that was being, that basis was being explored, that I was listening to see if there was any challenge. There was not. You did not object when the number came into evidence. The number being in evidence, it then may be referenced in any variety of ways. So the number had come before this jury and constituted evidence. The fact that it is then displayed in written form somewhere isn't adding anything to the equation. It's simply presenting that evidence already before this jury in a different form. And that is what you objected to. Do I take it that your view was that by lodging an earlier objection that continued in effect throughout the subsequent testimony of this witness?
My response to that question, Your Honor, is the number had already come up through Mr. Pierre. He was shown the number. It was shown, and he completely.
He did not recall it, did he?
Yes, he denied that was his number. So, and when Mr. Hagan was showing him the detective a document, he showed the detective the search warrant, the application of the search warrant, which is not the records that he was referring to. And at that point, after when he attempted to, my understanding of what Mr. Hagan was doing was attempting to lay the foundation, the proper predicate for this to be admitted. When he felt he was going to introduce this as Jarrell Pierre's phone number, which was the displaying of the contact list on Mr. Hernandez's phone through the large screen, through this device, the Elmo device. That is when I felt it was proper time to lodge the objection. The fact that he says the number is of no significance. What's of significance is when he relates it to Jarrell Pierre's contact, or JPD, in the contact list of Mr. Hernandez's phone. That's the whole issue here. Not that this number exists, or that there's a 404 number. That's the issue is that specific number Mr. Jarrell Pierre's number as it relates to that contact list. And that's when I made the objection on multiple occasions.
Well, all right, it seems to me that's a two-step inquiry.
Well, he was about to go there, and that's when I made the objection.
One is the introduction of this telephone number as belonging to Jarrell Pierre. This witness testified that it did based on his investigation of Florida records.
And to clear that up too,
Yep.
everything in Florida is a public record. Okay? If I send this detective here an email, that's a public record. Everything under the Sunshine State laws, Your Honor, every single document that's given to a public employee is a public record. So these documents, the standards are completely different than they are here in Massachusetts.
Well,
And it's all hearsay again. It still doesn't overcome the issue of hearsay. So when it relates to
where is the hearsay?
this database that he utilized to determine that it was a number associated with Jarrell Pierre. He doesn't even know that it's Jarrell Pierre's number. It's just a number that was associated with Jarrell Pierre at one point or time. It could be his baby mama's phone that he borrowed. He could have gotten pulled over for a ticket and said, "This is my phone number," and that's it. And that's the reliability that this court wants to accept.
No.
If you accept that specific thing. Maybe I misspoke. That's the reliability for which the Commonwealth wishes to use when admitting this in evidence.
But fact remains, you didn't object when it came in. You are objecting now.
I didn't object to the mentioning of the number. I objected to the mentioning that it was Jarrell Pierre's number, and that it was Jarrell Pierre's number, and that that's the number that's associated with that contact.
Yes, but that's what the number was given as. It was given as, did you determine Jarrell Pierre's telephone number? Yes, I did. How'd you do it? I looked at all these sources. What did you find? I found this number.
I believe he was asked what investigative steps he used. He undertook to attempt to
Yes,
find his number.
and as a result,
He went through his whole step process, and then when he finally put it up here, that's when I objected.
all right, then I'm going to apply your objection back to the testimony regarding the telephone number. And I will sustain the objection and instruct the jury to disregard that testimony. All right, let's get wait a minute. Counsel, come up here to sidebar. With the testimony in this case, I want to make two comments, or a comment and an instruction. You've noticed, perhaps, I don't know how you could miss, that we've had a fair number of sidebar conferences in this case. I've noticed on occasion that when we've gotten up to go to sidebar, some eyes have rolled among the jurors. And I will tell you that on occasion, my eyes have rolled as well. And the exasperation that you may feel, sometimes I feel. Unlike you, sometimes I may act out on that. And I want to make clear to you that you're seeing an outstanding performance by all counsel in this case. To the extent any juror thinks that I've made a comment to any lawyer in this case that would reflect on their professionalism or on their skill and diligence, Please disregard that. I hold all these lawyers in the highest regard and think they're all doing a very fine job. So don't draw anything from from what you may perceive as occasional feelings of exasperation. And certainly don't hold that against any side in this case. I will be telling you before you deliberate. Job to determine this case, and that you're not to draw any impressions or conclusions from any views you may have as to how you think I view this case. My job is to be neutral throughout, and not to have any position on the evidence or about what the verdict ought to be. That is your job, not mine. You are the finders of fact, and you find those facts based solely on the evidence that you've heard in this courtroom. Now, with regard to the evidence that you've heard, we just heard some evidence regarding an attempt to locate a telephone number for one particular party, Mr. Pierre, and a telephone number was then announced or given in testimony, and I am now striking that testimony. So you're to disregard and put aside any testimony relating to a particular telephone number attributed by this witness, at least at this stage, as relating to Jarrell Pierre. Counsel, I think that does it. Let us continue with testimony.
On the screen, Detective. It's been entered as Exhibit 251, page 8. Just to clarify, sir, this name that's listed as JPD 404-861-3292, was that a number that you obtained?
I'm sorry. Let's hear the question, and then I'll hear the objection. What is the question?
Was this a number that you sought a search warrant for phone records of?
Yes, sir.
And in addition to phone records, did you also seek a search warrant for cell tower records of this item that's, again, on this exhibit, 251, page 8, listed as JPD?
Yes, sir.
And Detective Smith, calling your attention to Jarrell Pierre, are you aware of whether or not he was shot in the year 2013?
I don't recall if he was or not.
Detective, calling your attention now to your investigation, did you in fact obtain the cellular tower records for those 3 phone numbers that you sought?
I did, yes, sir.
And ultimately, did you share those records with authorities, including detectives from the Boston Police Department as well as other Massachusetts authorities?
Yes, I did.
And have you essentially, Detective, been involved in various aspects of the investigation and related investigations for years?
Yes, sir.
Is it fair to state, Detective Smith, that at no time did Alexander Bradley ever agree to assist in your investigation? Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
But when was the last time you actually inquired of him whether he would cooperate?
I believe it was June of 2013. He had.
June of 2013?
Yes.
And after that interaction with Mr. Bradley, at that interaction he refused to cooperate, is that correct?
Correct.
And since then, have you had any interactions with him at all?
Not that I recall, no.
Thank you, Detective. I have no further questions.
Defendant.
May it please the court. Mr. Hagan. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, Detective.
As to you too, sir.
Just have a few questions for you.
Sure.
You mentioned that the only time that you stopped investigating the case because you didn't have victim cooperation.
Yeah, I had no victim cooperation, very little evidence. Went over what we could at that point, and again, without cooperation from the victim.
Okay, but that's not a reason to not have an investigation, right? There's no legal reason for you to not proceed with your investigation, right?
Correct.
So for example, if the victim had died, you wouldn't have cooperation either, right?
No, we get
Or
correct cooperation.
participation, I should say.
We can still get participation,
Okay.
just
Other than through an autopsy.
correct.
But in this case, you still have the medical records. You have the same evidence, physical evidence that was or was not at the scene, right?
Correct.
Okay. And you have a thing called victimology, right?
Correct.
Okay. Did you conduct any victimology in this case?
We did not know.
Okay. And for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, victimology is actually investigating who the victim is, right?
Correct.
Okay. So you did no victimology at all?
No, sir.
Okay. So were you ever made aware, either immediately there or later on, that Mr. Bradley was a drug dealer who trafficked in guns as well?
Sustained in that form.
Were you ever made aware that Mr. Bradley carried firearms?
Objection.
Overruled.
I don't believe so, no.
Were you made aware that Mr. Bradley was a drug dealer?
I don't believe, I believe so. It may have came up somewhere, I'm not sure.
Did you know that he was a drug dealer for the last 14 years?
I knew.
That would be important information for you, right?
Could be.
Okay. Might lead you to investigate the case in a certain way.
Depends. I mean,
Might make you think that drug dealer shot, might have been dealing drugs.
Overruled.
as you stated, it could.
So that you're also aware, or were you, well, let me ask you this. Were you ever made aware that Mr. Bradley was walking around for about 5 minutes before he was actually found?
I believe so, yeah. I think somebody saw him in the area.
Okay. And did you see the crime scene? You were at the crime scene that night, right?
That morning, yes, sir.
Or that morning, excuse me. And you were made aware that he was walking down this alley here, right?
I don't recall anybody telling me specifically where he was, but I know that alley was in that, obviously there.
Okay. Well, I know it's there.
Yeah.
It's still there
But-
today, right?
I hope so.
Okay.
Hasn't fallen off yet.
All right. Now, but no one told you that Mr. Bradley was seen walking out of this alley?
Objection has to be.
No, you may answer that.
Not that I recall, no.
Okay. So you're the lead detective. The first people who found him never told you that they saw him walking out of there?
They could have, but I don't recall at this
That's
point.
just something you don't remember.
At this point, no.
Okay.
Sorry.
And if he was in fact seen walking out of this area, would that be an area that you'd want to cordon off and possibly look for evidence?
Such as with the vehicle that's there, yeah.
Is that a yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. There's no crime scene tape there though, right?
No, but we have one of our deputies posted there.
I understand that, but there's no crime scene tape there, right?
Not that I can see.
Did you instruct CSI Lancaster to inspect that area?
I may have, but I don't recall if I did or not.
Okay. So she would know, of course, right?
Yes.
Okay. And did you search that area?
I believe I remember going down that alley and,
I'm not asking if you walked
Yeah.
down the alley. I'm asking
no,
if you
I went down in that alley and I remember it's one of our typical, they say in Florida alleys, there's a bunch of junk in there. Yeah.
And did you search through any of the junk to see if you found any evidence?
I remember we walked up and through there. We didn't go through I didn't personally go through with metal detectors or anything like that. But
You didn't conduct an exhaustive search of that area?
I walked through there and I looked. I'm not sure how exhaustive.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
someone was coughing. What did you say?
I walked through and I looked and poking around, see if there's anything there that we could use, what may possibly could be used. We do that with all of our scenes. We try to go out as far as we can.
You pick over a few leaves or stuff
Well,
like that?
just-
What I'm trying to know is, did you do an extensive and a proper search of that alley?
I personally know that would be down onto our crime scene.
And you can't recall whether you instructed them to or not?
I don't at this point, no, sir. Sorry.
Okay. Do you know if there were any cars parked to the right of that police car?
I do not recall.
Okay. So, you don't know if Mr. Bradley had arrived there in another car, and that car was still there?
Correct. I have no idea.
You don't know if Mr. Bradley had disposed of any evidence in that alleyway
Correct.
or around that corner there?
Correct.
But you do know that he was seen coming out of that area?
Sure.
And you know that he was walking around for 5 minutes prior to being seen?
Not necessarily sure about 5 minutes, but I heard that he had been walking around.
And you know that he was remarkably alert when he was found, right?
Correct. That's what I heard.
And you're aware that he told everyone who was asking him that he didn't know who shot him, right?
Correct. Something to that effect.
Now, this area is a bunch of warehouses, right?
Yes. Industrial area.
It's an industrial area. It's also common, it's also a common area where drug deals are done, right? Warehouses every area?
If you know that to be the case, sir, based on your
Based on your experience.
experience, you may testify.
I've never worked narcotics, so I'm not sure on that one.
Okay.
And this is not per se, I never worked this on the road, let's put it that way, so I'm not
You're a
sure.
police officer in South Florida.
Correct.
You know that warehouses are a haven for drug activity, don't you know? Is that correct?
Sustained in that form.
Aren't drug, let me rephrase it, aren't warehouse areas utilized many times by drug dealers?
Sustained.
Now, when you went to talk to him finally, he wasn't very cooperative with you, was he?
He was respectful, but just stated that he didn't want anything to be done, didn't wish to pursue any kind of prosecution.
And he lied to you too, right?
Possibly, I'm not sure. Can you elaborate?
Okay. Well, he told you he didn't have a phone, right?
I recall, yes.
Okay. And he told you, when you asked him for a phone number, he didn't tell you you had two phones, right?
I don't recall him saying any. Correct?
And in fact, he gave you his mother's phone number.
Possibly, yes.
Okay. So he wants you to call his mother if you need to get a hold of him?
I'm sorry, put the question again.
He wanted you to call his mama to get a hold of him?
Sustained.
He gave you his mother's phone number to call
Yes, sir.
to get a hold of him?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And didn't give you neither of the two phone numbers that he had at that time?
Correct.
And it was a landline, right, that he gave you?
I believe so.
I can have just a moment, Judge. I'm not further questions. Thank you, Detective.
Welcome, sir.
Anything further?
Briefly. Detective, you were just asked some questions by Mr. Byes about what areas were searched and which ones weren't, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
How many other detectives were there besides you there?
If I remember correctly, there was at least one other detective with me at the scene, and there was also one at the hospital.
And during your time at the scene, did you see detectives and uniformed officers milling about the area?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Did the area where you saw detectives and officers milling about or walking around, did that include the area that Mr. Byes pointed to?
Yes.
The alleyway there?
Yes.
And additionally, did you see officers, I believe in that photograph that I just had Mr. Byes take down, actually, you can see a Palm Beach County cruiser at the end of the alleyway, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So that area, was that also, at least from your observations, being searched by Palm Beach County authorities?
Yes.
And you saw detectives and uniformed officers walking that area?
Yeah. Yes.
Now, just relative to potential evidence that could have been missed, and I think Mr. Byers asked you some questions about the leaves and such. In fact, Detective, did you receive a phone call sometime after the incident from a civilian who thought they may have found some evidence?
Yes, I did.
And based upon the phone call, did you go back to that scene and recover a piece of potential evidence?
I did.
Where was that it was recovered?
I don't remember the exact location, but it was right there in that industrial complex. It was within a block.
What was the item that was pointed out to you?
It was a projectile, obvious projectile from a gun.
What caliber projectile?
It was a .45 caliber.
And what was the condition of the projectile?
It looked like it was in pretty good shape.
And based upon your training experience, Detective, based on it being a relatively good shaped projectile and being a .45 caliber projectile, from an investigative standpoint, did you conclude that that didn't have anything to do with this particular incident?
Yes, it didn't appear that that projectile had traveled through anything
But point being,
but air.
Detective, though, when a civilian called you about finding potential evidence, did you go and collect it?
Immediately, yes, sir.
And other than that call, did you get any other calls from any of the workers, like Mr. Mingle or Mr. Riddle, or anybody else who found evidence near that warehouse?
No, sir.
And to your knowledge, Detective Smith, is that warehouse area an active work area, meaning it's an open business 5 or so days a week with workers?
Monday through Friday, yes, sir.
Thank you, Detective. I can put it.
Detective, there's no such thing as a milling about search, is there?
No, but there are things that have been milled about, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, things are found.
Okay, well.
So it could happen, per se.
Okay, you weren't asked if anybody milled about in that alleyway, were you? Except by Mr. Hayes.
Right, by you now.
That's not what I was asking.
Okay.
I was asking you if a exhaustive search was done of that alley.
I can't say not by myself.
And you would, as the lead detective, would be in charge of you would review all reports. In this
Correct.
case, right?
Yes, sir.
Did you read anywhere in any report in your entire file that alley was ever searched?
I wasn't looking specifically for that through my report, so I don't recall.
Do you have your file with you?
I do not. It's in my hotel.
You knew you were coming to court today to testify in a double murder case, and you didn't bring your file?
Not directly here, no. I brought it with me, though.
Okay. Obviously, you reviewed it before coming to court today, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. And in your review of your file this morning, see anything about a search of the alley?
I don't.
No, you may answer for the
Okay.
last time.
The last time, I don't recall. No.
No further questions.
Thank you, sir. You may step down, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. Have a good day, sir.
Commonwealth.
McDonnell calls Ryan McDonald.
So you solemnly swear the testimony shall give this court and jury and the issue now pending between the Commonwealth and the defendant at the bar shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you, sir. Can I call the officer?
I still have a seat
Mr. Hayden.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, sir.
How you doing?
Would you please, I'm doing well, thank you. Would you please introduce yourself to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury and spell your last name for the record?
Ryan McDonnell, RyanMcDonnell.
Mr. McDonald, how old are you?
I'm 28.
What type of work do you do?
I work at Yard Metals. It's a warehouse.
And where did you grow up, sir?
Bristol, Connecticut.
And have you essentially lived in Bristol or neighboring towns your whole life, sir?
My whole life.
Mr. McDonald, I'm calling your attention out to a particular individual, that person being Aaron Hernandez. Do you know an individual named Aaron Hernandez?
I do.
And do you see Mr. Hernandez seated in the courtroom today?
I do.
Can you just point him out and describe an article of clothing he's wearing?
He's wearing a blue shirt and a blue tie.
Or if the record may reflect the ways identify the defendant.
It may.
Mr. McDonald, did you go to school in Bristol?
I did.
At some point in your schooling, particularly I'm calling your attention now to a grade beyond elementary school, did you get to know the defendant, Aaron Hernandez?
Yes.
What grade did you meet?
I believe it was 6th grade.
And from meeting him in 6th grade, Mr. McDonnell, did you and Mr. Hernandez develop a friendship?
We did.
How close did you get from 6th grade through 8th grade?
We were very close, 6th through 8th.
When you were growing up, would you see him from 6th to 8th grade approximately every day or thereabouts?
I mean, I want to say every day, but yeah.
Did you, during that time period, go over each other's houses?
Yep. Yes.
And did you become aware of Mr. Hernandez's relatives as well from your time being a friend with him in between 6th grade and 8th grade?
Yeah, some of them.
Calling your attention now, Mr. McDonnell, to high school, 9th grade through 12th. What high school did you go to?
Bristol Central.
What high school did the defendant, Aaron Hernandez, go to?
Bristol Central.
What happened with your relationship, your friendship with Mr. Hernandez once you got to Bristol Central?
It fell off a little bit. You know, he was a big-time athlete. His brother was there and stuff like that, so it definitely fell off a little bit.
But even though it fell off a little bit, Mr. McDonnell, did you stay at least cordial and friendly with him and occasionally see each other?
Yes.
Calling your attention now, Mr. McDonnell, to post-high school. Are you aware of where Aaron Hernandez went to college?
Yes.
Where did he go?
University of Florida.
Did you keep in touch with him at all during those 4 years or 3 years he went to University of Florida?
Rarely. Holidays, birthdays, you know, maybe call each other for those things, but that's really it.
And calling your attention now to prior to him going off to the University of Florida, are you aware of an address of 114 Lake Avenue?
I am.
And who lives there, sir?
I don't know who lives there now.
Well, who lived there back when you were growing up in high school?
I believe it was Tanya. I'm not sure names, a couple other people.
What was the relationship of family relationship with Tanya and the others that lived there to the defendant, Aaron Hernandez?
I know Tanya was his aunt, or cousin, I believe. I'm not sure, to be honest with you. Maybe his uncle was there as well, maybe another cousin. I'm not exactly sure.
And in the time period still, Mr. McDonnell, of prior to him leaving for college, University of Florida, what observations did you make about the amount of time, if at all, that the defendant, Mr. Hernandez, would spend at 114 Lake Avenue?
He was there often.
And when you say often, what do you mean by that?
You know, a few times a week, maybe more.
Did you know of him staying over there sometimes? If you
I
knew.
believe so.
And calling your attention now in particular to what, if any, observations you made of his relationship, his being the defendant Aaron Hernandez's relationship with Tanya Singleton. What observations do you make of their relationship?
They were close.
How close?
Really close.
What was that? I'm sorry.
Really close.
Calling your attention now to any conversations you had with Mr. Hernandez about his relationship with Tanya Singleton. Did he ever indicate to you that he confided things in her?
No, I can't say that he told me that he confided in her at all. You know, like I said, I knew they were close.
Do you remember ever describing it as he confided in her a lot of things? Do you ever remember saying that?
I don't recall saying that, but like I said, they're close. So I mean, I wouldn't doubt saying that. I'm sure he did confide in her.
Now, Mr. McDonnell, calling attention now again, going forward to when Mr. Hernandez was at the University of Florida, you indicated that you stayed in touch, but you didn't stay particularly close at that point. Is that right?
Correct.
Is there come a point of time, Mr. McDonnell, where you again became very, very close to the defendant, Aaron Hernandez?
Yes.
When was that, sir?
When he returned to Connecticut.
Do you know about when that was?
Well, I honestly couldn't give you a year. It was whenever he was drafted by the Patriots.
So, Mr. McDonnell, if I told you that he began with the Patriots in 2010, would that refresh your memory as to when he came back to the area?
Sure, sounds about right.
When he came back to the area in 2010 and signed with the Patriots, what, if anything, happened with your friendship?
You know, we started talking more often. You know, we became close again.
In addition to becoming close, did you actually see him more often because he was in the area?
Yes.
How frequently would you see him?
You know, not all the time. You know, he was doing his thing with football and stuff, but, you know, we'd get back in town on weekends or whatnot, but maybe a few times a month or a couple times more.
And during that time period, Mr. McDonnell, when you would see him a few times a month, maybe a couple times more, at some point did you start to speak to him quite frequently on the phone?
Yes.
How frequently, and now we're into probably 2011, how frequently would you speak with Mr. Hernandez on the phone?
Probably every day.
More than once every day or just once a day?
More than once.
How close did you get as friends, sir?
We were super close.
At some point, Mr. McDonnell, and backing up a little bit, what kind of employment were you doing at the time in about 2010, 2011?
I was working for my father, construction. He's a carpenter. I was working with him.
Did something happen with your father's carpentry business that caused you to be out of a job, essentially?
Yes, he had neck surgery. So
once you were out of a job, and this is again sometime 2010, 2011, did you ultimately begin working for the defendant, Mr. Hernandez?
I did.
Describe the circumstances of how you worked for him and what exactly you were doing for him.
I guess you could call it a personal assistant, something along those lines. I kind of dealt with scheduling and, rides, this, that, I didn't always deal directly with it, with his endorsement companies or whatnot, but his agency would a lot of times contact me to contact him and, try to keep him on point.
And during this time period, did he pay you for that?
He did.
Would you work mostly from Connecticut, or would you come up to the Massachusetts area as well?
I was mostly from Connecticut. Sometimes I accompanied him to events and stuff like that, but mostly I was home.
And in addition to accompanying to events, did you ever get a chance to see where Mr. Hernandez was living from 2011 into 2012?
I did.
Where was he living?
Massachusetts. I'm not sure exactly the town. If I heard it, I'd probably recognize
Would
it.
Plainville sound familiar?
Yes.
Was that a house or an apartment or a condominium?
A condominium.
Had you been there at times?
I have.
During this time period, Mr. McDonnell, 2011 into 2012, did you become aware of Mr. Hernandez's other friends that he had, other than you?
Some of them.
Calling your attention now to a man named Alexander Bradley, also known as Sherrod. Did you ever meet him?
Yes.
How many times?
Maybe one time.
When was the one time, if you know?
I can't recall exactly the time. I want to say it was out for my 23rd birthday. I came up here to celebrate that. I believe he was out. I think he met us out with Aaron.
Mr. McDonnell, calling your attention now to anything that you learned, either from your own observations or from the words of Mr. Hernandez. Did you become aware of the relationship between Mr. Hernandez and Mr. Bradley?
I did.
What was the nature of their relationship?
They were good friends.
How good friends?
Good friends, I don't know how.
Well, did you become aware of them going out frequently together?
Yes.
Where would they go, again, from Mr. Hernandez's mouth? Where would they go?
Out, I guess all over. Clubs.
To where, sir?
Clubs, different things.
So Mr. Hernandez would tell you about going out to clubs with Mr. Bradley?
Yeah.
Did he ever indicate that they went to clubs in any particular cities?
Yeah, I'm sure he'd mentioned that he's gone out and, he lived up here, so I knew he's gone out up here.
And when you say up here, does that mean Boston, sir?
Yes.
Mr. McDonnell, I'm calling your attention now to any conversations that you may have had with the defendant regarding issues that he had while at clubs in the Boston area. Do you recall having some conversations with him about that? Mr. McDonnell, did you ever have conversations with the defendant Aaron Hernandez about whether or not sometimes people would approach him in clubs and say things to him?
Yes.
And what did he tell you about that? Like, in other words, what did he say? What was his reaction to what was being said to him?
As far as what?
Well, what types of things did he say people would approach him and say in the clubs, and did he indicate how that made him feel?
I mean, they said a lot of different things. There was fans who praised them, and there was, people who were fans of other teams.
And did Mr. Hernandez ever tell you how it made him feel when fans of other teams would say things to him? Did he ever tell you about any arguments he had in clubs?
I don't know about a specific argument, but I know things have happened.
So he told you about things that happened in clubs?
Yeah.
And what types of things did he tell you about that happened?
Just.
We don't have a specific instance. speaking in general terms now? The witness doesn't recall.
He told you about specific things.
No, I can't recall specific events.
All right. What a question.
Did he tell you about any incidents where he had verbal altercations with people in clubs?
Yes.
How many times did he say that? Did he tell you about that happening?
I don't recall a number.
But more than one?
Again, I don't recall, but probably.
No, sir. In this time period, did you ever go to clubs with Mr. Hernandez?
Never.
Never?
Hardly ever. No, maybe as far as I could say, clubs. No. You know, maybe a bar, something like that.
And your observation, sir, again, from your conversations with Mr. Hernandez, did he indicate that Mr. Bradley, Alexander Bradley, or as you knew him as Sherrod, that he was with him when he would go to clubs in Boston? Did he ever indicate that?
Yes.
Calling your attention now, Mr. McDonnell, to any nicknames that Aaron Hernandez had. What nicknames did he have, sir?
The only one I could think of is Chico.
Did you ever hear him referred to by the nickname Double A?
I have not, no.
And you'd known him since sixth grade, is that right, sir?
Correct.
Then when you rekindled your friendship with him when he was in his 20s and in the area, you never heard him referred to as Double A?
I have not.
So I'm going to call your attention now to what your phone number was back in 2012. What was your phone number back in 2012, sir?
I believe it was 860-324-4601.
Mr. McDonnell, I'm just going to place on the screen page 5 of what's been entered as Exhibit 251. The number that I've zoomed into there, category or item number 43, is that your number, sir? Or was that your number back in 2012?
Yes.
And that the name listed is Khan? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's what I see, yeah.
Have you ever gone by that nickname?
No.
Do you know?
No, never.
So you don't have any idea why the person who entered that nickname would put that in there?
I have no idea.
Mr. McDonnell, I'm calling your attention now to a specific date, this date being July of 2012. And I call your attention as a point of reference to a trip that you went on with the defendant, Aaron Hernandez. Do you recall going on a trip somewhere in July of 2012 with Mr. Hernandez?
I believe so.
Where did you go? And again, calling your attention to a return date of at or around July 15th, 2012. Where did you come from with the defendant on that date?
I believe we were coming back from Costa Rica.
How many days were you in Costa Rica, if you recall?
A week. 7.
7 days?
6, yeah, 6 nights, 7 days, whatever it was.
Who went to Costa Rica?
Just Aaron and I.
When you went to Costa Rica, did you have a return date set, or did you come back early?
I don't recall. I think we had a return date set, as far as I can remember.
Mr. McDonnell, your flight back, did something happen that you recall on the flight back that caused you to be diverted somewhere?
Yeah, I don't think we were diverted. We were delayed.
Do you remember where
Yes.
you landed during the delay?
I believe it was one of the Carolinas. I'm not sure.
One of the Carolinas?
Yes.
Could it have been Charlotte?
Yes.
Do you recall what time you arrived or thereabouts in the New England area from that Costa Rica trip?
I do. It was early morning, 9:30.
Where did you land?
Bradley.
It is, for those who may not know, is Bradley International Airport in Hartford, Connecticut, or thereabouts? Or Windsor Locks, actually, correct?
Windsor Locks, yeah.
When you landed, were you with Mr. Hernandez?
I was.
You had been with him the entire 7 days, is that right?
Yes.
When you arrived, you seem to have a pretty good memory as to what time you got there. Why do you remember the time you got there? Was there something you had to do that day?
Yes.
What was that, sir?
It was my nephew's baptism.
Were you the godfather for that?
I was.
What time was the baptism?
I believe it was 10 o'clock.
Did you get there on time?
I did.
Who picked you up?
My fiance.
Mr. McDonald, did you become aware from Mr. Hernandez what his plans were for that night?
I can't say that I do, no.
Did he indicate to you what, if anything, he was doing?
Not that I can recall, no.
Did he indicate to you if he was staying in the area or going somewhere else?
Not that I recall.
Do you know how he got picked up from the airport?
I don't know for sure how he got picked up. At the time, I believed it was his fiance.
But you didn't see her pick him up?
I did not.
Mr. McDonald, I'm going to call your attention to the cars that Mr. Hernandez drove back in 2012. Are you aware of what cars Mr. Hernandez drove back then?
I believe so.
And what cars did he drive in 2012?
I know of a black Range Rover, and I know of a Toyota 4Runner.
A Toyota 4Runner? Do you know where he got that Toyota 4Runner from?
I do.
Where did he get it from, sir?
I believe it was a promotional deal that him and Toyota.
With what Toyota dealership, if you remember?
I don't remember the dealership.
Check. It's relevant.
Well, the witness doesn't recall, so let's move on.
So I'm just placing on the screen what's been entered as exhibit number 262. Do you recognize that vehicle, sir?
I do.
And what do you recognize that to be? What vehicle?
It appears to be Aaron's car, if not very similar.
And did you see Aaron Hernandez use that car in 2011 into 2012?
I believe so.
Mr. McDonald, did there come a point where you no longer saw that car?
Yes.
And around the time that you no longer saw that car, Mr. McDonald, in your role as an assistant to Mr. Hernandez, did you have some conversations with Jack Fox from Toyota, without stating what was said?
Directly, no.
Did you have some conversations with agents representing Mr. Hernandez regarding Jack Fox?
I did.
And did you then have conversations with the defendant, Aaron Hernandez, about Jack Fox and that Toyota?
I did.
And did there come a point, sir, that you never saw that vehicle again?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald, calling your attention to tattoos that the defendant has. I've had the opportunity, in the course of knowing him, for the years you've described to the jury, to observe tattoos on his body.
Yes.
And at times, have you even had conversations with him about at least some of the tattoos on his body?
Some of them.
Just going to place on the screen, Mr. McDonald, what's been entered as Exhibit 252D. Do you recognize that tattoo, sir?
I do.
And do you know what those letters stand for?
I believe I do.
And what do they stand for?
I believe it's can't be stopped, won't be stopped, I will be the greatest.
And did you learn what that stands for from the defendant, Aaron Hernandez?
I believe so, yes.
And was that a saying that he used at times?
I don't recall him, it being a phrase he used all the time, no.
And did that phrase, if you know, have any meaning to Mr. Hernandez? To his profession?
Yes.
And he told you that?
Yes.
And Mr. McDonald, to save some time, are you aware of a tattoo on the defendant's fingers that say EST and then 1989 on the other hand?
I am.
And do you know what that refers to based on conversations with Mr. Hernandez?
I don't recall if we ever actually had a conversation about it, but I think I assumed what it meant.
What does it mean?
Established, 1989.
And is 1989 a date of significance of any type?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald, have you had an opportunity prior to testifying here today to view a video with somebody that you recognized conducting an interview on TV?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
For the phrase question, I'm sorry. Have you had the opportunity prior to testifying here today to watch a video on a thumb drive of an interview conducted of somebody you know?
Yes.
And who was the man that you recognized being interviewed and speaking to a reporter?
Aaron Hernandez.
May I approach witness room?
You may.
Drive that you watched, sir.
Appears to be.
And again, does it have an interview of Aaron Hernandez, the person that you've known since your childhood, giving an interview to a reporter?
I believe so.
At this time, I'd ask that the interview thumb drive be marked as the next number exhibit.
All right. That is received subject to an agreement.
Is it 339?
For the record, I'm going to play exhibit 339. And while we're paused on the screen, Mr. McDonnell, is it fair to state you recognize the...
So a couple with tattoos.
Stop me here. Do you recognize the individual who's appearing on the screen now, sir?
I do.
Who is that?
Aaron Hernandez.
We'll agree that this is Aaron.
All right.
I had to go there, man. Can I see your arm? Can you, all right, don't talk to me. Talk to me.
Well, they all got a lot of meaning, and
What's the meaning on your farm?
it says that's
Can I see it, show?
yeah, it's a quote my father always used to give me.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it says, if it is to be, it is up to me. Basically,
Wow, if it is to be, it is up to me.
yeah, 10 2-9 words. And basically saying my life's in my hands, and whatever I want my life to be, it's up to me to make it out that way. I can't depend on nobody else, and all the decisions I make are because of me. So the life I want to live is all in my hands.
Are you good?
Did you watch that video, sir?
I did.
And did I hear correctly when Mr. Hernandez said tattoos, my tattoos mean a lot to me? Did I hear that correctly?
I believe so.
And Mr. McDonnell, I'm calling to your attention the Mr. McDonnell, I'm going to show you a thumb drive that just says calls and a word in front of that. Did you have an opportunity to listen to the content of this thumb drive?
A word in front of it?
Not the word in front of it, but did you listen to the thumb drive, the recording
I
on
did.
here? And did you recognize the male voice on here, sir?
I did.
Who did you recognize the male voice to be?
Aaron.
The female voice contained on this thumb drive, who did you recognize that woman to be?
I believe it was Aaron's mother,
What is her name?
Terry.
Your Honor, that the thumb drive be marked for identification.
Is there an objection?
My understanding is just for ID.
ID only.
For identification.
Mr. McDonnell, I'm also showing you a CD. Did you have an opportunity today before testifying to listen to recordings on this CD, sir?
I did.
And one of the male voices on this recording, did you recognize the male voice?
I did.
Who did you recognize it to be?
Aaron.
Aaron Hernandez, the defendant?
Yes.
Your Honor, should this be marked for identification only?
Triple Y.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. McDonnell, did you make any observations of the relationship between the defendant and Tanya's husband, TL?
Nothing specific that I could point out, no.
Did they appear to be friendly?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. No further questions.
Mr. Byers. Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
You may sit down, please watch your step. Mr. Hagan, who will the next witness be?
Ms. Jenkins.
All right. The next witness is not a witness. We're going to finish in any short period of time. Makes more sense to start that witness's testimony tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, as I indicated, at least for the moment, our plan is to start tomorrow at 12 o'clock. And the officers will give you instructions with regard to where and when to meet. But that is all subject to health. And if indeed we are not able to sit tomorrow, we'll attempt to notify you all by about 10 a.m. So keep your, whether it's cell phones or home phones or email contacts activated so that we can reach you tomorrow if we have to. Again, if you get no call, plan to be here at noon. Between now and then, please don't discuss the case, don't read, hear, or see anything about the case. Don't attempt to learn anything about this case on your own. Enjoy the evening. We'll see you in the morning. Between now and then, please don't discuss the case, don't read, hear, or see anything about the case. Don't attempt to learn anything about this case on your own. Enjoy the evening. We'll see you in the morning.